can you squeeze in another class? And how you immediately find ways of doing that. In fact, I had the conversation with Elba yesterday and with Shelley, PS 86 and PS 33, around helping us find some space for some universal pre-K classes that we need to accommodate in the district, and they were so accommodating that it's really appreciated. I think that we've grown with the idea that where we can fit a few, we can fit many. And I think that's part of those givens in District 10. Let me say good morning and certainly welcome not only our principals, but our math experts and math staff developers and math partners who are in the room. We're really excited about today, excited that we've all come together, and as you can see, we probably didn't anticipate the numbers that we've received in terms of attendance. I think some of you probably snuck in. Okay, who are you? No, we're not going to tell you to leave. We're very happy, in fact, that you're here, because this is the army that we need to be able to do our work in District 10 around mathematics. As many of you know, we've, throughout the years, really focused on literacy, and a few years ago, probably 2 years ago, began to turn the corner and began to really focus on mathematics, to the degree that we understand as leaders how to teach mathematics, what are the important elements in the teaching of mathematics, how do we know that students are learning, what's the evidence of that, then that will really help us help our teachers in our classrooms. So welcome today. I want to also recognize and thank the teachers who you will see today on videotape. Can I just ask those teachers who were videotaped to please stand? Okay, one, okay. I'm sorry, I thought there were more. For some reason, we did videotape the numbers, but we're going to show one this time. Okay, this time around. But thank you so much. You know, it's always so interesting when people actually allow themselves to be videotaped. And it's even more impressive to know that so many of you are going to see it and obviously discuss what she did in her classroom and give feedback, etc. So the fact that she was willing to do that is certainly very impressive. Thank you very much. Before we begin, as you know, these conferences usually take place in places like Lehman and other places because we have wonderful sponsors. And they help to support our work in the district. They help to support your work in your schools. And we're always very appreciative that they are willing to sponsor our principals' conferences. Today, with us, we have Lydia Gonzalez, and Lydia's no stranger to District 10. I've known Lydia for many, many years. We're certainly very pleased that through her work with Rigby and other companies that I know that she represents, that she has always been willing to help and support us in our work. So I'm going to introduce Lydia, who will introduce her partners to you today and give you a sense of what she's brought for you to look at today.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, friends, neighbors. For people that I haven't met, because there are quite a few new faces here, and hopefully I'll meet you throughout the year, I'm Lydia Gonzalez, and I am the representative of Rigby. Now, Rigby has changed its house a bit. We are now Rigby, and there's Rigby RPD, which is your professional development, which you'll be seeing in your district too, and there's also Steck Bond. We are all under the Harcourt Supplement Publishing Group. How did I do with that? Okay. See, we deal with change too. So today you're going to see all of the rest of my so-called family from the Harcourt Supplement Group. Most of you, and please forgive us if you don't have a packet in front of you, believe me, before the end of
And my name is Monica Dantley, and I'm probably new to most of you. I started with the company about 3 months ago, but I'm willing to get to know everyone individually at your schools. And I just wanted to let you know that we have some new products on display at the exhibit table, so you can take a further look at an in-depth level when you get a chance. And as Wellington mentioned, we do have a new product called Power Up. And Power Up was created by Dr. Roger Farr. And the goal of that was to introduce a reading and writing program for the middle school students who are struggling with reading. So each of you have a packet, and there's a fiction or a nonfiction piece in your packet, and it's to power up. So if you are interested, I also have my phone number and all of that information in there, and I would certainly be happy to make an appointment with you to discuss it at a more in-depth level. But Power Up can be used as a way to, you can use it in an after-school program or in small groups or Saturday programs or things like that. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to meeting all of you.
Thank you, Monica. I have to tell you that the three of us up here, we all live in District 10. We all live in Skyview. But it just so happened. And I happen to be very fortunate today that my son is working with me, a former District 10 student, Christopher Gonzalez. He just graduated law school. Let me, let me be proud. So he's here sharing with the family today. And you notice you have an awful lot there on your desk to carry. So as you leave for lunch today, we have a bag for you, okay? So we thought about that. So thank you very much, and have a really great day. Okay. Oh, excuse me. There's an extra special piece in there. This year we found a small company called Kids Discover. It has nonfiction magazines. We put it on contract. No, you'll find it in a plastic envelope. And it's a magazine in there. Yes, fabulous stuff. So if you're looking for more nonfiction, non-textbook type of material, it's already on Fast Track. Okay? Thank you for reminding me. And thank you.
One of the things that Lydia did not mention, I don't think I heard, was that Christopher just graduated law school. So, former District 10 student. We're very proud. Thank you so much for your help today. You know that the work in mathematics in the district has really been looking at is how to really create a balance in the work that we do, and how to make sure that there is a real flow with the learning of basic computational skills, and how to use those skills in problem solving. And a lot of the conversations that we've been having with our principals, and I think that staff developers have been having with Ron Feinstein and the other team, mathematics team at the district level, has been around looking at the mathematics block and how we configure that block, not so much to straitjacket people in terms of you must do this at this time, but to give people a real guide around what the expectations are in terms of the work to be covered in mathematics and how to cover it. If you notice, and I know that there's going to be a lot of more conversation about that as a result of some of the conversations that we've had with you, the staff developers, some of the conversations that we've had with our principals, we have revised that block because we've been listening to your suggestions, your recommendations. What we need to say, obviously, is that because we continue to work together, our work is continuously being refined. So we're hoping that as a result of a lot of the conversations that we're going to continue to have, that eventually we will have a block that really represents the work that we think should happen in classrooms. So today, one of the things that we heard clearly was that you wanted to be able to, as a total community here, really look at mathematics instruction, look at examples of the different components of the block, be able to discuss that among yourselves, and to be able to better hone your skills around what, especially for principals, when you walk into a classroom, what you should be looking at and how you can be guiding teachers, and for staff developers the same. So I'm really pleased, you know, that Ron, I don't know if you do know this, but Ron Feinstein is off in Japan. He is a Fulbright Fellow, and we're really pleased that he was selected. He was, of course, very excited. We actually have a teleconference with him. When is it? On Tuesday, December 4th at 7:30 in the morning. So if any of you want to join us at the conference room at the district office, we'll be able to talk live with Ron. He'll be, it's distance learning, and we'll be able to communicate with him, and he'll be able to talk to us about some of his experiences in Japan, and we'll be able to talk to him about our principals conference and how it went. But certainly, I'm sure that he's going to bring back a lot of information and good learning when he comes back. That's why I want to especially thank our math team, who has taken leadership in really focusing on this day and in helping to structure the day. So I just want to say thank you to Freddie Capshaw, Jules Margaret, Rosemary Nieves, and Maria Leatherwood because of their commitment and hard work. And without further ado, let me introduce Freddie, who's going to really move us through the day in terms of the work that we have to do. Thank you.
Welcome, all of you. Thanks very much for being here with us today, and thanks also for all the support that you've given the Math Initiative throughout the year. Ron is in Japan. His shoes, Gucci shoes, are a little hard to fill. We'll do our best. And by the way, we're videotaping this whole thing, so he's going to see, don't talk about him behind his back, because he's going to see it all and hear it all. We want to introduce a few people who have supported us in this particular effort. It was really a remarkable challenge to produce a videotape in a very short amount of time. Let me just first say that the day will be structured in 3 parts. This morning you will see a videotape of a very courageous teacher. And then this afternoon we will try to bring some clarity to the issue of learning logs and journals. And then the final component this afternoon will be a discussion with your cluster groups around the article that you've been looking at, and particularly we found some interesting relationships with that article and the learning logs, the collection of data, collection of evidence. So you'll be changing your seating arrangement a little bit this afternoon. This ought to be fun because of the numbers of people in the room, but you will be sitting in cluster groups when we come back from lunch. Let me just, I want to say thank you to Liliana and her team, our videographer. She really did an extraordinary job in producing this in a very short amount of time and with great style and grace. Also to our colleagues at the district office who support us all the time and in great and small ways. To our executive team for their vision. They really do have an extraordinary vision, which we notice when we go out into other groups, larger groups, citywide groups. District 10 really does have a rather extraordinary vision around mathematics, and it wouldn't be possible without the support of our executive team, our colleagues, and the people who really support us behind the scenes. You know, Tony and Frank and Wayne and Anna and Beverly, all those people who day in and day out really do give us an awful lot of help, for which we are tremendously grateful. I also would like to introduce, we have with us this year some Australian consultants, and I think at least one of them is here today. Frank Skunderbeg, would you stand up? Thank you, Frank, and we thank you for the work that you're doing with us, and you know, at some point maybe there'll be a chance to hear your perspective on it. Is David Ilsley here? I don't think I saw him. And Brian, I don't think Brian is here today either. Okay, but we really do appreciate their support. Also, we have 2 other people who have been with us for the past as long as I've been at the district office, and they've been in and out in various capacities, but they're always there with us, and that's Joan Litsky and Don Friedland. Can we just give them a special little thanks? And of course, a special thanks to our principals and our staff developers who, whatever we ask you to do, you just step up and do it, and are always very good to us and very supportive. Basically at this point, I'm just going to turn the meeting over to Jules, but I just want to say that this is really kind of an amazing day. Usually when the math group walks into a room, we can empty a room pretty quickly, but you're a captive audience. You're a captive audience. We hope you enjoy the day. And without further ado, let me turn you over to Jules.
This is like the Academy Awards. I never heard so many thanks. By the way, Ron called the other day, and he left a message. He said, "You guys are going to be great. Don't be nervous. Say hi to everybody." And he said, those TVs that wash the shore in Japan with the Chinese rig, he's going to send a lot of those TVs back here for scientific experiments. Anyway, I call your attention to the math block. So please, in your packet, you have the math block. And it starts off with K to 2. And we have it on the overhead as well. And it's important to just go through it a little bit today. We're going to be referring to it as we see the video. And you'll use that as a frame of reference when you watch the video in terms of its different components. So just to walk you through it very quickly, that is the K to 2 60-minute block. And basically all the blocks are similar in that they break up into 3 components, really, 3 basic large components. There's that launch computational piece, there's the exploratory investigative piece, and then there's the sharing and evaluation. Within that, there are some, delineations, but basically that's the way it works out. The times that are assigned to these components are different as well. If you have a 90-minute block, of course, the times are different versus a 45-minute, and this is a 60-minute block. So, 15 to 20 minutes for the first piece, and then 30 to 35 minutes, as you see, and then to wrap up the share and the evaluation is 10 to 20 minutes. And there's a pretty good explanation there as to what all these things really mean. We went through a lot of different constituencies, and they all had input as to how this should look. So it's been revised and looked at, as Irma said, over and over, and this is really where we're at right now. And it's pretty comprehensive. The next one is the 3 to 5, and it's also a minute block. And again, the times are about the same. And it breaks down the same way. There's a computational practice and the mini lesson, then there's the exploration, and finally the sharing and the homework and the evaluation. The next one is the 90-minute. That's also in your packet. That's the 6 to 8 90-minute block. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. And the time allotments there are a little different because obviously there's more time. So we're talking about 15 to 2, and also it's broken down a little differently. Instead of the mini lesson being lumped with the computational and whole class share, it sort of sits by itself, as you notice. Okay, and then there's the exploration, which is 35 to 40 minutes, and the evaluation and sharing, which is 10 to 15 minutes. By the way, keep in mind that the investigations may take more than one day. That's number one. That the reflections can take a variety of forms, and that even these different pieces do not stand alone as monoliths. They're very fluid, and they flow into each other. And in fact, when you see the video today, you'll see a great example of where they don't necessarily stand by themselves, and that the mini lesson could appear here, but it could also appear in the computational practice. And it really depends on the dynamics of the lesson, it depends on the teacher, and it depends on how the teacher really wants to introduce that lesson. And we will talk about that when you see the video, but that's really a great example that these things do not stand alone as separate monoliths, sort of. They are fluid. So if you have concerns about that, I wanted to address that because I know a lot of you folks do. We have talked about that. Right, writing is also integrated throughout the entire thing. Thanks, Rosemary. And then there's the 45-minute block, the 6 to 8 45-minute. And again, on this one, the times are a little different. The 10 to 15 minutes for the computational practice, The mini lesson here, by the way, is with the exploration, as you notice. Okay, because there isn't enough time, really, it was felt. So it's part of the exploration. And I also happen to think that all explorations need a mini lesson to really be introduced. In other words, that really is the walk into the exploration, the little piece that the teacher does with the kids that's kind of teacher directed. So here you have it with the exploration, and that's given about 15 to 20 minutes. And then you have the shared evaluation and the homework assignment, which is about 10 to 15 minutes. So here you have all of the different possible blocks that we've been working on. And, you know, again, they're fluid, and there's dynamic to them. Does anybody want to say anything, have any concerns, or anything about this particular piece? Any questions about it?
No, I just wanted to say I think the team did a great job putting it together. The first time I saw the first draft of this, which was probably 10 drafts ago, I had a lot of concerns, but all the concerns were straightened out, and I think it came out really, really good.
Anybody else? Any questions or concerns about this? Any ideas? Things we haven't looked at? Okay, great. Okay, moving right along. So and you'll be referring to that. All right, let me just say the video will reflect the 90-minute block. The video you'll be seeing will reflect the 90-minute block. And I really want to thank Anna Roeder again for doing a magnificent job with this. I feel like I know her. I never met her before, but I saw the tape about 5 times because we were constantly looking at it and refining it, and she just did a magnificent, magnificent job. I really want to thank you again. You know, it was really great, and you'll see when we do the video. Please give her another round of applause. She deserves it. Okay. Before we show the video, I just want to say a couple of things about it. Basically, the lesson really is about lowest common multiple. And what that's all about really is, here they talk about it in terms of cicadas, locusts, but it could be anything from if you have a bicycle with a large wheel and a small wheel, or if you have a pulley system, or any of those situations where there are 2 separate entities that have their own kind of life. When do they get together? When are they synchronized? And in this particular case, it's about locusts and when they come out, and, you know, how do we figure that out? In the old days, basically, LCM was really, not in the old days, still today, LCM is really used for folks who want to add fractions with different denominators. How do you find the common denominator? But in CMP, what it does is it really brings a real-life context to it, and it's really done very, very well, as you'll see on the video. So why don't we look at the video? Yeah, when we look at the video, we will stop at certain points, and we will share and talk about each of the components.
Figure out just multiples of both times, and figure out the least common multiple to figure out when the 2 people would be at the bottom at the same time.
And that was the prior work
That was
in
the
prime
prior
time
work,
as well.
yes.
Yeah.
And so coming into 4.2, they should have a pretty clear idea of what a multiple is and how to find a least common multiple. Now, in this investigation, they had to figure out when 2 different cycles happen at the same time. Now, with 4.2, the locust problem is what we're doing today. They have to use the same technique to figure out when, again, 2 or more cycles meet, when the locust will, 17 and so on, would arise, and they would have to use also the multiples and the least common multiple to figure out when they would be on Earth rather than under.
And could you tell us what materials that you have prepared for the day that are going to help kids do this work?
Definitely. Well, to start off, the computational practice, I found this really interesting technique to find the least common multiple. Now, they're very used to using the column technique to find the LCM. And the Math at Handbook actually introduces one where they have a grid, and it's very visual, if they can see it right in front of them. And by using different colored pens or different shapes, they're able to find the LCM in a different technique, a different way. So it gives them a choice.
Another strategy.
Yeah, another strategy, definitely.
This procedure from the Math Handbook actually segues directly into the lesson as well.
It does. Mm-hmm.
And so what's going to be the evidence that...
Question right from the extension, the connections from prime time, which pretty much brings everything together, but is actually asking another type of question with the same kind of idea. And that we'll actually be able to see that when we walk around, see if they're getting it, they're answering it. Also with, I'm using actually one of the questions from the textbook. We've been talking a lot about multiples and the difference between multiples and factors, but you have a kid, you'll have a kid here and there that's going to go, instead of multiplying.
And I'd like to have a little discussion with you about that component. And in your package, you also have the questions that I will be talking about with you. So if you look at the videotape breakpoint discussion questions, okay. Well, let me just take you through them. What was the purpose of this component? You didn't? Okay. What is the purpose of this component? You don't, I'm told you don't have those questions. I thought you did. Okay. What's the purpose of this component? Accountability? Uh-huh. Anybody else? Assessment. Just for those who didn't hear, she wants to see if the children really knew how to do that procedure. Okay? Okay, so you're calling this a kind of a launch. Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll talk more about that. Yeah, maybe we could hand the mic still. Thank you, Rosaline.
I think it was more of a review of the skills that they had from the day before, so that they are prepared to go into the next lesson. So she wanted to be sure they're all on the same page about the skills.
I'm going to put the questions up here. I have them here for those folks who... I forgot to turn that... What? Yeah, okay. So the questions are up there. Anything else about the purpose of the component? Go ahead. Activate prior knowledge. Very good. Very good. Okay. Freddie?
It's important to note that she is starting investigation 4.2, so the work that she's showing is related to other work that they've done in this unit up to this point. So it's a balancing act of prior knowledge related to prior investigations, but also setting the focus for what they're going to do today.
Right. Thank you. And what do you see happening in this piece? What do you actually see happening? Don?
What she's actually doing is, by questioning all the children and having the kids come up with their responses, she's not only assessing what they know, but they're also expressing themselves mathematically, and they're also, if there are any misconceptions that the students have, she's straightening that out before they're actually starting the lesson, so the kids are really ready to go.
Thanks. Yeah, Helen?
Just in line with what Dawn said at the beginning of the discussion. At the beginning, she asked if there were any confusions about the homework, so that at that point, if there were children who really had struggles with the homework, that opened the door for where her mini lesson, might end up.
Yolanda?
Another point that I saw was that the teacher has created an environment where students feel safe about taking risks. They feel that they have a voice and that they can share their ideas, and they don't feel intimidated.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any of our principals want to jump in besides Yolanda? Okay. Okay, great.
I thought the lesson was really excellent. I have just one question as to why there wasn't an extension on multiples into pairs where one is not a multiple of the other.
We're getting, this was, yeah.
Knowing the way kids are, sometimes they may look at those pairs and say, one number always has to be a multiple of the other because those were the examples we had. So to extend the thinking that that type of example could have been brought in.
The activity was also student-teacher interaction. It wasn't just the teacher giving them the multiples.
Keep in mind, this is just the computational part. There's a lot more to come.
That's what 4.2 does. It's answering the principal's question over there. 4.2.
Right, that investigation will answer your question, Mercedes. That investigation will answer what you're looking for. Okay, we're not there yet. Don?
It's possible I didn't understand one of the responses because one of the problems she did with the numbers with 2 and 5, those numbers are relatively prime, and 5 is not a multiple of 2. So she was looking for a least common multiple that would be of a larger number. So I'm not quite sure what happened there.
The numbers do not have to be multiples of each other. They're two separate elements, and she's finding the multiples of both numbers, and at one point they're going to be synchronized, and they're going to collide. So they're not necessarily multiples of each other, just to clear that up. Julia, back there.
Also, something that I would have liked to see, I would love to see the lesson plan. It was really helpful to see the pre-conference, but there's something about the spin that she did on that identity property with 1 that felt spontaneous. I didn't actually think it was in the plan. It seemed like she kind of had a teachable moment where kids were coming to a realization about 1, and she went with that. And it would be interesting to compare what we're actually seeing with what the plan was, because it felt like she had an opportunity for the kids to learn something about 1 again, and that she went from there.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I wanted to respond to that. You're completely right. That came out of nowhere. I was like, and I saw a chance to explain to them that 1 is always a little bit weird. Because they always see 1 and 0 doing different things that the other numbers don't do. So I thought it was a really good chance to bring that in. Well, thank you.
Also, you have to remember that that 1 property should be introduced in the 3rd and 4th grade. So you're building up now. This is what, 6th grade? So they should have been familiar with this since the 3rd grade, I would say. So it's nothing new. They really should have knowledge of that, as well as other properties.
I thought it was an interesting use of the homework to start the lesson. She basically used the previous day's homework, went over that 1 example thoroughly as her practice, which is a nice, seamless structure there.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sure.
In addition to what everyone has said, I would like to congratulate the teacher for her enthusiasm and her presentation and engaging kids. We often find that content is certainly important, but we have to believe that kids can do it and set that environment, and she obviously has the enthusiasm that makes math all the more interesting.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, what is the role of the student in this thing? What you saw so far. What's the role of the child in the classroom? What is their role in this particular component? What are they doing and what's their role? Anybody? Okay.
Basically responding to the teacher. It's a teacher-directed lesson.
For those who didn't hear, it's a teacher-directed piece. They're responding to the teacher. They're interacting with the teacher. Okay?
they're showing their understanding of what the teacher is questioning and developing.
You have a question?
Would she answer it? What did she do about the little girl in the blue who seemed to not understand what was really? What did she do for the little girl in the blue that was asking offbeat questions?
I know the question is, what did you do for the little girl in the blue that seemed to be asking offbeat questions? I don't know. Oh, the one that said, the one is divisible by something else. Well, I guess she's probably going to help her, you know, talk to her later, do some differentiated instruction, you know. Go ahead, you want to answer that? Go ahead.
The little girl in the back that was having problems explaining. Well, usually when that happens is they know what they want to say, but it's so hard for them to put it in mathematical terminology. So what you do is what I try to do is I try to mold it a little bit, maybe direct them in the way that they, you know, maybe give them the vocabulary so then they can use it and come back to it. Maybe I'll come back at the end. Probably she would have fixed a little mistake that she made, or maybe put it a little bit clearer for everyone to understand it.
Thanks. What about the supervisor? What's the role, what's the focus in this component for the supervisor? So those folks here are going to, let's say you just watched this piece, what would be your focus in observing this component?
I think that the supervisor should commend the teacher for the plan that she had to develop this particular concept and to go over this homework assignment. I also think that she should commend, or he should commend the teacher for the development of mathematical language, and for them to understand the importance of saying things the way they mean them in mathematics, and to be able to explain it in a proper way. Especially the part where the child misspoke about the 1 and the 5 and the 1 and the 6, and the way the teacher molded that around so that everyone understood that that was a mistake, but that there was a proper way to say it and probably what the child meant.
Anyone else?
I think she should be commended too, that she only took one problem to go over the whole thing instead of using all the homework. She chose one problem that shows exactly what she wanted the kids to learn, which doesn't take up that much time. So.
Talked about homework, and she highlights one problem, which she doesn't have time to go over all of them, and I've given workshops on how to do that, and I think I addressed the principals last time just about that, and how to do homework, and she does it just right, just the way I like it. Thank you, Rana. Anybody else?
I think Dolores mentioned it, but I think as supervisors, when we go into a math classroom, we're certainly looking for the teacher's content knowledge. We're certainly accountable for ensuring that our students are being corrected in a way that is safe, and being given the right vocabulary and given the tools to then go to the next level when they do make a mistake, when they make their corrections, that they're given the information that they need. I think one of the things that we struggle with in math classrooms is when errors are made, or when you have that struggling offbeat question in the back, that a teacher should be prepared to respond in a way that not only addresses that child, but then addresses any other child who may not have spoken up, to make sure that the statement is very explicitly made by the teacher, and that the vocabulary or the definition, or if it's the identity, property, whatever it is, that it's labeled properly for the students. And I think that I would add that there were a lot of quality statements by the students that I would have recommended charting throughout that piece, even though it is just the beginning of this lesson and we're hoping to see more. There were some really key statements made by the teacher and the students that when they're charted, they become visual for those students that need that kind of reinforcement. But I think as supervisors, that's what we have to do, is just kind of support the teacher for that next step as well.
I think the teacher should be commended for making the connections of the computational practice around prior work and hopefully coming into the lesson. I think it was wonderful that she took advantage of a golden opportunity to discuss the concept of one and its use in this area, but then didn't lose the focus and returned to the lesson objective. I was a little bit concerned. I'm not sure about if the computational practice seemed to be not as challenging as I would like to have think for the 6th grade. And the lack of students' math vocabulary is also an issue.
Well, that leads me right on. Okay, we have some more comments back here.
To
And actually-
answer your question, what is the role of the supervisor? The role of the supervisors is to be able to ask for the lesson plan, to know the components of the math block so that you know what you're looking for when you're looking at the lesson plan and
Absolutely.
the lesson.
Absolutely. And the content of the lesson, yes, very important. The language of the teacher. Gregory?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about her use of the blackboard and how important it was for her to have a big blackboard to work on, and how just working on one problem, just working on one homework problem, she covered the whole, and it was important that she did because she needed the first part to refer to the last part. And how in our classrooms, we need a big blackboard to work with math.
Thank you, Gregory. Well said. I'm a big Blackboard fan.
One other thing that we need to look at is capacity building, obviously we haven't seen the whole lesson, but we need to also identify within our buildings models, classrooms, sites where other teachers can come and visit and see certain parts of a lesson, so that teachers can then go back and also complete these lessons within their all their home classrooms.
Harriet, you want that one? Okay, some of those comments, by the way, lead really to the next question, which is, what questions do you have, or what do you need to learn more about to effectively coach the teacher? I mean, a couple of things were already said. So what do you think you need to learn more about to effectively coach the teacher? Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm getting the one of those signs, like on TV. Go. Yeah. We'll continue, and we'll continue that discussion after the next component. So think of these questions when you watch this next piece. Questions come to mind. I'm not going to go through all the questions again. What I want to say is, in this particular component, I think it really illustrates where the mini lesson is done as part of the computational practice piece, and that is not done later on, because there's a classic mini lesson in terms of leading into the investigation, which you'll see her do later, and she uses a very nice technique of using the hundredths chart as opposed to the columns or several other techniques that might be used. So the mini lesson is really embedded in here, and it really is not come later. Later there's a launch, which you'll see. So just in general, what would you need to think about when you're looking at this lesson in terms of supporting the teacher and just any concerns that you might have about this lesson, this component, this part? You have a question? How long did the piece take? I have that right here. No, this component piece took 14 minutes. This piece took 14 minutes. From the beginning, 14 plus 8, it's about 20 minutes so far. Okay. Any of our principals want to share about what they saw and how they might want to support the teacher, or any concerns they have about this component right here, or any comments? Yeah. Julia?
Just that a comment came up here that it's still a lot of very frontal teaching, and that although there's a lot of time push, it might be possible to have kids turn to a partner and just, like Jackie said, write down the one statement that describes what you've observed. It's something you could ask kids to do in 30 or 45 seconds, and then that allows you to check in a little bit more targeted way for student comprehension. So if kids are observing, if you're doing the noticings about the 100 table, if kids write those down, it reinforces some of that language stuff and lets you check with the individual pairs and see if everyone is really with it.
Jules?
Yeah,
Just
Bonnie?
wanted to comment about the question on time. You did not see the entire time the kids practiced the computation. I don't know if you realized there was a slight fade out there. And then when Miss Rhoda came back, she said, okay, I think most of you have finished. So you didn't see all of the computational practice. And the reason, it is a 90-minute block that was taped, but there were pieces we cut out because we didn't think you wanted to watch everything, all the kids doing all the work. So I just wanted to answer that lady's question about time.
Yes. Actually, very little was cut from the computational time. Most of what was cut from the students working in their cooperative groups because
Right.
we felt you'd be more interested in seeing the final product rather than every... Yes. About a half an hour. The two pieces. I wanted to just, yes, Bob, we'll get right to you. There were two really important comments that were made. Jackie talked this morning about the importance of having some sort of a whole class chart, and Julia just made reference to it also. We're going to talk a little more about that this afternoon. We're going to talk about the importance of doing that in all mathematics classrooms, in all classrooms. So we will address that.
Can I just add something? I just want to say that this part of the lesson also reinforces the notion that every single classroom should have an overhead projector, because it's a wonderful teaching tool.
From an early childhood perspective, the thing that struck me was how important the skip counting is, that we're evolving and developing, so that when we look at a sixth grade classroom and we see that children really are not all that familiar with the hundreds chart, and that should be a non-issue by the time that the kids get there. The other thing that really struck me, the other piece that really struck me about the work that was done was that when the child made really the leap to the fact that multiples of 12 are 3 and 4, and that then it would then follow that they would also be multiples of 24. The piece that I felt could have been strengthened there would have been that a moment of talking, having other children come into that conversation. I felt that there was too much student-teacher restating. I would have liked that to have bounced a little bit in the classroom and gotten other kids to restate what it was and to really sort of elaborate on it. Because again, just like the number one, that was a teachable moment. And I recognize that this was done for video purposes. So that's a hard position to be in, to keep your point of view because other people are going to be viewing it. But I think it's important for us to acknowledge it here, because I think that whole notion of having kids do restating and having other children elaborate on what another child has stated or another child's idea is really critical.
I'm certain that Anna Rhoda does that a lot more often than she did under these circumstances when she was under such extraordinary pressure to do it quickly and to make sure that it all happened within the time constraints that were put upon her.
Very motivational. Absolutely. Your students were engaged, they were listening, they had their hands up. If we could have all that going on in every classroom, it would be wonderful.
I also want to say that I think it was a real good way for the for the teacher to assess exactly what the students knew, and even if it was a lot of frontal teaching, and even if it was a lot of student to teacher directed answers, I think it was an excellent way for the teacher to understand where her kids were at a given moment in time.
I think I recognize that voice, so I'll follow up. Hi, Kat. I made it. I just want to comment on the question about the overhead projector. You need a staff developer, Angela Minchilli, new this year, but terrific. Don Friedland, who I'm fortunate to have, and my supervisor of math, Doug Paucheski, to break my you-know-what to get what you need. They came to me about the needs for this program. And yeah, I never bought so many of these things at one time in my life as principal. And I couldn't understand for the life of me why. Now I have a better understanding. Don't presume that because we're a principal, you know everything. We don't. So we need you people to push us and to challenge us and to be direct with us. And then you have to understand our constraints, because then we go to Irma, you see. But seriously, I just want to publicly compliment Anna for her courage. She's only a second-year teacher. She is really... And I want to say one other thing. She does not act alone in isolation. No classroom is isolated from other classrooms. It's part of a whole environment in a building that allows teachers like this to go forward, and hopefully we can keep these teachers in our system because we need them. But it's part of a larger environment. Her presence here is really supported by an enormous staff back there, because wherever you are in the building, you're connected. And if you can maintain an overall environment in a building, then this kind of work can go forward, not only in that classroom, but in all classrooms, in the challenge that we have each and every day. So, and I want to thank the district for having the confidence in 45 to come and to make Anna a star today. And there'll be a table for you, Anna, to sign after, you know. But congratulations again to Anna for being here today.
Okay, Don, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think one thing that was evident, the teacher took a look at what was going on in the connected math program and said, well, there's something that was missing that she wanted to supplement it with. So she took a look at some of the other books around her. She took a look at the Math on Call. Is that the right one? Math in Hand. I get confused which is which. And so that has what she needed. One thing this shows is the amount of preparation that it really takes to put this kind of thing together, and the amount of time that they really have to put into this to make the entire thing work. Another thing, since we're talking about overhead projectors and money, for example, a nice thing to do in that lesson would have been, and it's more expensive, of course, to make up more copies of the 100 charts on the overhead, hand it to the kids so the kids could do it at their desks, and then have them come up and do it. So the idea is to make sure that you can erase them real carefully and use them again. A lot of things come to money, but that's a nice way to use the overheads, which we did feel were very important. Nice work, Anna.
I just want to make a final comment before the break. For those folks who are concerned about the children not doing enough, or the arrows going from teacher to student, basically in the computational piece and in the mini lesson, that is the way it is done. We move towards a learner-centered approach as we move in the lesson, and you will see in the investigation and in the wrap-up and the sharing that the kids basically own most of it at that point. So please have patience. The first part really does call for a didactic, teacher-directed lesson for those folks who feel that the kids should have more ownership. Just wanted to say that. Take a 10-minute break.
Can only take 10 minutes for this and 15 minutes for that and 20 minutes for that, and oops, my time is up and we need to move on. We have to also be real, and we have to have that flexibility. This is not dogma. So I think that's important to be able to say that up front, that the reason why we were specific around components is because we want to make sure that we do address each of those components, but that they're cyclical. We also need to understand that to the degree that we become better, the early childhood grades around teaching children in mathematics, we go through this in literacy. That'll have an impact in terms of what's going to happen in that middle school classroom, what the rate and the pacing will be in that middle school classroom as a result of what kids know. So that's our real challenge here, is also to be able to understand, you know, let's look at where kids are at. We're looking at the pedagogy, obviously, of our teacher, but we also need to understand what are the implications for us as a district in terms of the work that we do. So let's continue looking at our videotape and having some conversations about it. Who's next? Okay, Maria.
Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Maria Leatherwood. I am the early childhood math person at the district. And I'm glad that Irma said what she said, because at our table, Carolyn Jones and I and Elise, who's her staff developer, were talking together because we keep talking about the academic rigor that happens at the lower grades that frequently people that have a large span of grades don't get a chance to look at. And we were talking about a lot of the observations that the children were making, and people were talking about the direct teaching that Anna was doing. Anna only has what us lower grade people provide her with. So the fact that those children were making those observations at that time, that's what she had to go with. However, the experiences that we're able to give them at the lower grades would support that. So they'd have those aha moments like that. So that was one of the things I was asked to say to you. The other thing I wanted to tell you that is right now, we're getting ready to have a different format of fun. And my friend Aaron Feldstein, who is similar to me, I'm a pocket calculator kid. So today when we knew that we were going to be doing mathematics, we were really excited. And I put up a quote from a mathematician. And it says, mathematics is an opportunity for you to play with your brain. So right now, we're going to get a chance to play with our brains. And prior to watching Anna's introduction of the lesson, which is Investigation 4.2 in prime time, which I was also asked to call to your attention. Remember, it is only one investigation out of the book. But prior to us doing the investigation, I'm just going to give you some batteries, because everybody here knows about multiples and factors. Those of us may not remember it, so we're going to quickly just do something about it. My colleague Freddie was reminding me how it's really important that when we talk about factors and multiples, we need to look at them in relationship to a number. So that when we do that, because as we know, math is all about relationships, when you look at factors and multiples relative to a number, you'll remember that whatever number is there, the factors are smaller than that target number. And then thinking along those lines, whatever that target number is, the multiples are really big or bigger. So given that, those are our batteries before we start to play. In your packet, you also have some tools, one of which Anna has covered with her children, the hundreds chart. Thank you. And the second one is a 300s chart. So what we're going to do in a non-threatening environment, for those of us that may be math phobic, at our tables, before we watch Anna and her students approach the problem, we're going to take some time, about 10 minutes. We're not going to share. We are going to talk amongst ourselves at our table. But we're going to take a little stab at the problem, and we're going to do part A. And it's basically talking about Stefan's grandfather, and he told him about a terrible year when the cicadas were so numerous that they ate all the crops on his farm. For an urban girl like me, cicadas, it really helped that she set the context by showing me those big, oversized flies. That made it okay. Stefan conjectured that both 13-year and 17-year locusts came out that year. We're going to assume, in going against my friend Felix Unger, we're going to assume that Stefan's conjecture was correct. And the question that we're going to work on is, how many years pass between the years when both 13-year and 17-year locusts are out at the same time? Explain how you got your answer. We're not going to do that. You can just explain it in your own head for yourself. But right now, I'd like us to take 10 minutes before we continue with the tape to work on the cicada problem.
What is it, 1? 170. So let's see, 13, 170.
Before I do the video, though, I want to call your attention to this very, very nice little thing that I picked up at the math coordinators meeting citywide on Friday. And it seems really quite simple, but it really is at the heart of everything you said today. And basically, I do, you watch, I do, you help, you do, I help, you do, I watch. And what we really want to do in this is move the arrow from there down to here. That's really where we want to go. We want the kids to own it. We want the kids to eventually do it on their own. And if you see the video in its entirety, you'll see that Miss Rhoda does exactly that. She, in the beginning, does I, do, you, watch. She does most of it. It's interactive. She does it. Teacher dominated. Then she goes a little bit into I, do, you, help. And you will see that she's very much into you, do, I, help, and you, do, I, watch as this video progresses. So I just wanted to call your attention to that. I thought it was a very nice piece about really all our work and basically a lot of your comments today. Okay, let's go to the videotape, as Warner Wolf says. And we're going to see the launch part now. And again, this is the launch of the lesson. What was that? Oh, this is the launch of the lesson. And again, it shows the fluidity of it, where some folks may have maybe put the launch at a different time or the mini lesson at this point. This is the launch. Go, roll it. Okay, the supervisory focus questions for math lessons. And what we're going to do is each table is going to tackle a different question. So when you get your chart paper, you don't have to tackle all of them, you'll just tackle one question. And then there'll be after a while, when you have a chance to discuss the question and the answers to the question, there'll be a reporting out about that question. There's a marker at the center of your table to record the question, the answers, the concerns, the discussions, and so on. And every table will have a different question. Yeah, some tables will be dealing with the same question because we have a lot of tables and not that many questions. This is my packet. No, she doesn't have it. But, you know, you know what? Here, I have this one. Take this one. Because I have mine in this packet. Okay. What comes on after this? Good question.
why they got educated.
They need to know about prime and composite numbers. They need to know, possibly, and only in that it helped me, about what a prime factorization is, because I used it to help me solve the initial problems. When we were watching the children, some of them were adding, understanding about odd and even numbers, adding two odds, adding two evens, adding an odd and even number. And also patterns, not solely on the 100 chart and on the 300 chart, but in addition, if you look at the patterns in the units digit and the tens, if you look at the place value patterns, children can pick up whether or not they made mistakes in their skip counting as they went along. So as I said, this is probably just a small amount of what was actually being used, what the teacher would need to know in that lesson.
We had exactly the same. Our strategies were the same. The group, they learned new strategies for multiplication, addition. We needed to know standard algorithms. Like Helen, we discussed patterns, the importance of number sense, prior knowledge of mathematics, multiples and factors, and applications to the real world.
Thank you. Ken?
What is and what will come after. Number of patterns. How is this connected to the prior learnings and next steps? And the range of numbers, we would like the children to discover that you can multiply 13 by 17 and know that it's 221, and instead of going through that, and then they can work from there, the process of elimination. Also, the tools to use for understanding the content, the tools that they would be using to make this useful, but how to use those tools in this particular lesson. If you're willing to.
The concept of these kind of multiple factors and all of those things that were mentioned before. We also talked about, as a supervisor or math staff developer, that you need to actually do the problem and go through the experience so that then when the children are having the same kinds of blocks or blockades, that then maybe you can be able to support them. Because most of the time we have the same problems that children have. We talked about how to use the hundreds charts, being familiar with the kinds of jumps and patterns that you see in the hundreds chart. And I think everything else was mentioned. And just a general idea of the whole connected net program and how it works in the framework. So it has a bunch of spreadsheets in there.
It says, what strategies, practices, or questions does the teacher use to support the student's development of mathematical understanding?
Well, first we felt that first we state the question and we use the appropriate math vocabulary in response to them. So that she was reinforcing a lot of the vocabulary. We also felt that